You wake up with a scratchy throat. Your head pounds with a dull ache. You stumble into the bright bathroom and carefully open the modern medicine cabinet to find immediate physical relief. You swallow a small white pill. But what happened before that cabinet existed? The truth about ancient medicine rewrites history. Your ancestors were not completely helpless. They were constantly armed with a deeply sophisticated medical system that was meticulously passed down through countless generations. They understood exactly how to heal. How did a prehistoric human actually treat an infection? You must completely forget the cartoon caveman. You have to closely examine the bones. A broken femur in the brutal wild is an absolute death sentence that guarantees you will be eaten or starve. A cracked leg bone entirely destroys you. What does a perfectly healed ancient femur actually prove? It proves one incredibly powerful fact. It proves that someone bravely stayed behind. Someone fiercely protected that deeply vulnerable person from apex predators while they were completely defenseless on the ground. Someone fed them for many months. Have you ever wondered why you crave attention when you feel ill? That craving is an ancient biological echo. Your nervous system strongly signals vulnerability today. In the Pleistocene epoch, physical isolation meant certain death without the constant protection of the surrounding group. Your ancestors knew this dangerous reality instinctively. Could a severely disabled human survive the brutal Ice Age? Dr. Penny Spiken studies the evolution of compassion. She is a brilliant archaeologist at the University of York. Her profound research clearly reveals that caring for the sick is the absolute core evolutionary strategy that originally made you human. Healthcare physically built the early human tribe. How did the earliest humans practice this radical care? They completely refused to abandon their injured. They became a living life support system. Dr. Spikens deeply studied the ancient skeletal remains of a famous Neanderthal man who is now famously known as Shanidar I. This prehistoric man lived in ancient Iraq. Did he survive his horrific physical injuries? He survived a massive, crushing head blow. He was left entirely blind in one eye. The violent physical impact deeply damaged his brain and withered his right arm until it was cleanly amputated above the elbow. He was also left profoundly deaf. Could a deaf and one-armed man hunt wild mammoths? Absolutely not in a survival of the fittest world. He should have died as a young teenager. But his ancient bones reveal the shocking truth that he lived well into his late 40s, despite his massive physical limitations. He survived for decades after his severe injuries. Why did his tribe furiously refuse to let him die? They chewed his tough food for him. They carefully guided him when his failing vision faded. The tribe itself was the ultimate medical technology used to keep their absolute weakest members alive against all natural odds. Compassion was the very first act of medicine. But was human compassion their only weapon against deadly disease? They also possessed a vast natural pharmacy. It was growing wild in the dirt. Your prehistoric ancestors relied on a highly stocked medical cabinet long before the modern invention of clinical science and laboratories. They understood incredibly complex natural botanical chemistry. What did they do when they caught a deadly bacterial infection? Imagine a Neanderthal living in ancient Spain. This individual suffers a massive dental abscess. The jaw is swelling with a painful bacterial infection that makes chewing food almost completely impossible for days at a time. The physical agony is totally blinding. What does this ancient human chew to make the endless pain stop? They cannot call a modern trained dentist. They cannot ask a doctor for a prescription. But they instinctively know exactly which rare tree bark they need to carefully peel and consume for instant relief. They medicate themselves using the dense forest. Who actually discovered this incredible prehistoric medical behavior? Dr. Laura Weyrich made a stunning scientific discovery. She is a brilliant anthropologist and skilled microbiologist. She carefully analyzed the hardened dental calculus of ancient Neanderthals to see exactly what they were constantly eating during their lives. Plaque acts like a permanent microscopic time capsule. Does it surprise you that a Neanderthal clearly understood pharmacology? She looked closely at the trapped DNA. She found undeniable genetic traces of the poplar tree. Poplar tree bark contains extremely high levels of salicylic acid, which directly reduces severe inflammation inside the human body. Salicylic acid is the exact active ingredient in modern aspirin. Did this ancient human cure their own massive headache? This ancient human intentionally treated their own pain. They used a prehistoric and naturally occurring painkiller. The astonishing scientific discoveries locked inside that ancient dental plaque did not stop at simple aspirin for a toothache. Dr. Weyrich also found clear traces of natural mold. Why would a sick Neanderthal intentionally eat moldy plants? They were eating a specific strain of penicillium. This is the exact same microscopic fungus that produces the world's most famous and life-saving antibiotic that we heavily rely on today. Thousands of years before Alexander Fleming discovered antibiotics, your ancestors were eating mold. They successfully fought off deadly bacterial infections. How did they figure this incredibly complex chemistry out? They actively watched the true experts of the forest. They deeply observed the wild animals around them. You might wrongly assume humans invented the concept of medicine, but wild nature got there millions of years first. This brings us to a fascinating and deeply important scientific field. Have you ever heard of the science of zoopharmacognosy? This is the rigorous scientific study of animal self-medication. Wild animals constantly use plants and toxic soils. Dr. Michael Huffman has spent decades carefully observing wild primates in the jungle to understand how they instinctively cure themselves. He noticed something truly bizarre about sick chimpanzees. What do chimps do when they get severe intestinal parasites? A perfectly healthy chimp completely avoids bitter plants. But a chimp suffering with a parasite infection actively seeks out the highly poisonous Vernonia plant hiding in the deep jungle. They carefully peel back the tough outer bark to reach the core. They slowly chew the highly toxic pith inside. Does this dangerous plant actually cure the dying primate? This toxic pith is almost entirely indigestible. It contains powerful natural chemicals that physically paralyze the deadly parasites in their gut so they can be easily flushed out. The primate feels utterly terrible for an entire day, but the deadly internal parasites are entirely destroyed. Did your human ancestors do the exact same thing? They absolutely copied the wild animals around them. Early humans were peerless and highly intelligent observers of the surrounding wild. They saw a sick bear digging up and eating a highly specific medicinal root before miraculously recovering from a wound. They carefully experimented on their own vulnerable bodies. How did they remember all of these complex natural cures? They meticulously memorized the biological and physical results. They passed this crucial botanical knowledge down through countless generations using complex stories, ancient myths, and rhythmic campfire songs. The ancient forest was not just a dark hunting ground full of terrifying physical danger. The forest was a complex and incredibly well-stocked hospital. What happens when you completely separate modern humans from that natural hospital? You get the bizarre and sterile reality of today. You live in an incredibly clean indoor environment. You are entirely separated from the complex chemistry of the living soil and the medicinal compounds of wild plants. Your immune system blindly expects a massive and constant diversity of natural microbes. Why does being physically sick today feel so incredibly lonely? You immediately retreat into a clean, quiet room. You artificially suppress your rising natural fever with a synthetic manufactured pill. You deliberately disconnect from your entire social circle to meticulously avoid spreading microscopic germs to your friends. This makes absolute logical sense in a highly dense modern city. But does your ancient primitive brain actually understand this physical isolation? To your ancient brain, this feels completely wrong. Your primal nervous system violently and immediately panics. It accurately interprets physical isolation as a massive and immediate threat to your actual ongoing survival. For millions of years of human history, being sick and alone meant you were already dead. Is this exactly why modern illness causes so much intense anxiety? This is precisely why being ill causes deep dread. Your physical body is quietly fighting off a temporary viral infection, but your primitive brain is frantically screaming for the immediate physical presence of the protective tribe. It desperately wants the familiar warmth of the communal fire. Have you ever noticed how a simple hug makes a severe headache fade? That is not just a clever modern psychological trick. That is a deeply ingrained physiological evolutionary response. Physical touch from a trusted tribe member triggers the massive release of a soothing hormone called oxytocin in your brain. Oxytocin actively lowers systemic physical inflammation and directly reduces physical pain. Are we fundamentally healing the wrong way today? Your body is naturally wired to heal through connection. We have engineered the perfect modern medical system to instantly kill bacteria and perfectly stitch up traumatic physical wounds. But we have accidentally engineered out the very ancient social cues that make human healing actually feel completely safe. We proudly traded the warmth of the tribe for the cold waiting room. We permanently traded the vast wisdom of the forest for the plastic pharmacy. Think about the immense and unbroken chain of survival. Thousands of generations of your prehistoric ancestors faced brutal, freezing winters. They faced vicious apex predators and devastating, mysterious plagues while armed with nothing but their minds and each other. They ultimately survived absolutely all of it. How did they survive without sterile steel scalpels and synthetic antibiotics? They paid intense and brilliant attention to the complex world. They painstakingly learned the hidden chemical secrets of the bitter bark and the strange green mold. But above all else, they stubbornly refused to let each other die completely alone in the dark. The next time you feel a fever coming on, pay close attention to the symptoms. What is your exhausted ancient body actually asking for? You will inevitably feel the strong urge to hide. But beneath that, you will also feel a quiet and unmistakable desire for someone to bring you warm soup. You are carrying the incredible genetic legacy of the most fiercely resilient survivors in the history of the Earth. Their hard-won botanical knowledge is still silently written deep inside your DNA. Their absolute reliance on each other is still deeply mapped in your nervous system. You are a walking testament to ancient medicine. You wake up with a scratchy throat. You stumble into the bright bathroom to open the modern medicine cabinet and blindly swallow a small white pill. But remember that long before that cabinet existed, the medicine was the earth, and the medicine was each other.